Hello and welcome to our item management lesson where we will be discussing inventory management. Today's topics will include inventory management, inventory transfers, and inventory adjustments. So with that, let's get started. So let's start off this lesson by going to the items list. To get there, click the Accounting tab followed by Items underneath the Inventory section. By clicking Search, we can see all the items that we currently have on hand, and on the list you can see the item names, which are hyperlinks so you can view the item info, what item type each item is, the quantity on hand if it's an inventory or a manufactured item, which category and division the item is associated with, followed by its price and cost. Now if we want to add a brand new inventory item, we can click the Add button right here to the left of the items list. This will bring us to the Add Item page, and to begin adding an inventory item, we'll first click the Type field and choose Inventory from the drop-down. Here we'll see a lot of information populate based on our chosen item type, and this information will help us configure our item to fit our needs. Now before we get too involved in configuring our new inventory item, let's first talk about what an inventory item is. An inventory item is a tangible item for which you're keeping track of your on-hand quantities over a specific period of time. This may include things like cycle counts, making adjustments, transferring quantities, and all of that revolves around inventory items in particular. Inventory items usually have very specific criteria that fits with that item type, such as reorder points, preferred vendors, manufacturers, and certain accounting structures, which we'll talk about as we go. Now first off, let's start with the basics. What inventory item are we creating in our system? Now just because it's an inventory item doesn't mean you necessarily have to sell the item. You could just buy the item and use it for other purposes. Let's say that we're going to use the item M&Ms because we bake a lot, as we discussed in our manufactured items video. If you haven't seen that, it's definitely worth a watch. So let's say that we're going to purchase M&Ms for our baked goods, and we're going to track the on-hand quantities, therefore it's an inventory item. Now categories, we can choose anything here. We also have a plus option to add a brand new category, but I'm just going to choose baking, and we'll also associate a division operations. Now the reorder point is the minimum value. What is the lowest point that you don't want to run underneath? So if I always want to have, let's say, 20 bags of M&Ms on hand, then I can choose 20 as the reorder point. Now down below the reorder point you have the preferred vendor and the manufacturer, and these aren't necessarily the same company, but it can be the same company. Let's say that your preferred vendor is Hershey's, because that's who also makes M&Ms. So if I don't have them as a vendor, I can click the plus option, and here I can search for the vendor's name and click the magnifying glass to try and search for anything that fits those parameters. So here I can find a bunch of different things that Google has located based on our criteria of Hershey's, and I can select any of them from the options by clicking the Add button, or I can also skip results and just add a new vendor called Hershey's. I'm going to choose this vendor and click the Add button. Now that I have the vendor, it's going to add that vendor to my vendors list, but it's also going to associate it to the item. And I can search for the same exact vendor here and choose it as the manufacturer. If there's a manufacturer item part, I can enter that here. I can also choose my units of measure, which I have count, length, and poundage as my units of measure, and I'm going to associate poundage. Now you also have options down here which will allow your vendor to include this item on a bill that they create through the vendor portal. And if you want that to be allowed, you can toggle that on, and if you don't want that to be allowed, you can simply leave it off. If this should be taxable, then you can leave that toggle box checked. If you don't want it to be taxable, just simply uncheck the box. Now over on the top right you have the pricing information. So this is your base cost for how much you're buying this item from your vendor. So let's say I'm buying this at 20 cents from the vendor. Now I'm not going to sell this item. I'm going to use it in items that I produce with my bakery. So I'm not actually going to add a price into this column. But if you did want to add price, you could either say, I want to sell this at $3, or you could calculate your markup. Let's say I wanted to sell this at 50%. It's going to calculate your base price from your cost structured by your markup. Now your shipping info, you can designate whether shipping is required. You can also track the weight of the item as well. So if I'm purchasing bags, let's say I'm buying a 2-pound bag. So I can write 2 pounds in here, and I can even issue a flat rate charge for the shipping or a percentage of price in here as well, just depending on my needs if I ship my items a lot. Now once you have your shipping info, you can track your accounting information. Now for inventory items, you have 3 distinct accounts to track with your inventory. And those are your income account, meaning that when I sell this item, where do I want the income to be posted to on my general ledger? Your asset account is there because when you purchase or sell the item, it's going to fluctuate your inventory asset account, meaning I'm adding value to my inventory or I'm extracting value by selling the item. And your cost of goods sold will track how much it takes to sell the item, your cost associated. So what accounts do I want to associate from my chart of accounts? Well, I want to associate my sales account from my income. I want my inventory asset to be associated from my asset account. And my cost of goods sold I'll associate to supplies. Now down here you also have 2 options for default class and default location, which are not required fields. But if you always have these associated to a financial class, you can choose from your drop down here. And if these are always going to be stocked at a specific inventory location, you can choose that from the drop down as well. Now I have a custom field on the item called size, and I can choose to track that information here from the drop down of my custom list. And then over on the bottom left you have your image option. So here I can add an image of the M&M if I want to. I can also add a description of the product as well if I want to. So M&Ms. So I can add a description like M&Ms used for baking finished goods. And I can even enter internal notes if it's something that customers or vendors shouldn't see, just notes about the product itself. And with those notes, you have a simple editor, which is basically an alphanumeric field. But you also have an advanced editor where you can add hyperlinks, videos, you can conditional format, which means that you can change your font colors, you can bullet and number, and things of that nature. If you want to go back to a simple editor, you can just click that hyperlink and it'll go back to the way you found it originally. Now once you're ready, you can just choose the Save button and you'll be able to save your new inventory item altogether. Now once it's saved, the type will be locked because you've chosen the type inventory as your item type. You can also add reference materials up here. So if I want to associate reference materials, I can associate something that I've already added in my settings. I can also add default tasks, which we'll talk about in a little bit more detail in the manufactured items video as well. If I go back to my basic information, if I'm already set, I'm good to go. I can click Save and Close, and this will bring me back to my items list. And here I can see my M&Ms have been added, and I have 0 quantity on hand right now, and you can see the units of measure as ounces. So now let's segue to our next 2 topics, which are transfers and adjustments. Now usually with inventory items, you're purchasing items from your vendors via bills, and you're also selling inventory items to your customers with invoices. But a lot of the times you're also performing inventory counts like cycle counts to track your quantities on hand and make sure that your numbers are accurate to what's being captured. And adjustments can help you perform those cycle counts electronically in your system. So to find inventory adjustments, you can click the Accounting tab and choose Adjustments underneath the Inventory section. And if I click search, this will show me any inventory adjustments that I've made in the past. But I can also click the add button to add new inventory adjustments as well. If you want to make a more informed search on the inventory adjustments list, I can also click the blue down arrow to search for specific items from my items list, specific inventory locations where the inventory was adjusted. I can also search for posted or voided adjustments and a date range if I need to as well. Now if I click the add button, this will allow us to begin adjusting our inventory items. And you'll notice a hyperlink up here, which is the type of adjustment being used, and it's quantity by default. But if I click that hyperlink, I can choose from one of 3 possible inventory adjustments at my disposal. The first inventory adjustment is quantity, meaning that I'm only adjusting my on-hand quantities for the items that I select. The second is value, which means I'm only adjusting the value of the items that I select. And the third option is quantity and value, which means that I'm adjusting both the quantity on hand and the item's value at the same time. Now let's choose quantity and value because we can tackle both adjusting quantity and value at the same exact time. Now when you're adjusting inventory, you'll see an item column, a total quantity on hand, a new unit value, class, and recent cost. And these columns will adjust based on the adjustment that you choose. Columns change as opposed to the quantity column. Now here in the item field, you can select what items you're going to adjust in your system. So if I choose gravel, I can then see the location drop down. And this is where I'm going to start adjusting my quantities for that specific item. Up here with the dollar amount, this is the value of the item. So if the value is, say, $1, I can choose to put that in the value field. In the location field, I'm going to choose the inventory location that I'm adjusting my on-hand quantities for. And once I choose that inventory location, the quantity on hand will be located here, and then I can say how much of that quantity I'm adjusting. So let's say I did my cycle counts and I found 2 gravel items that I didn't have before, so I can adjust that to a positive 2. Now there are multiple cases where you're adjusting inventory where you already have quantity on hand. For instance, if I choose cocoa powder, I can see that I have a total quantity on hand of 9.6. And if I choose my inventory location, I'll see where that 9.6 is located. So you'll see the new quantity is actually my current quantity. And as I adjust, let's say I found 0.4 ounces that I didn't know I had before during my cycle counts, the new quantity is going to go up to 10 because I've added 0.4 of one item. I can also adjust my value here, and I can choose my financial classes for each item as well. So these are both Philadelphia inventory locations, so I can choose the appropriate class to match that. Now, apart from doing inventory adjustments manually, like I've demonstrated here, you can also choose Find and Select Items. And when I click Search, this will show me all of my inventory items, and I can select them en masse by choosing them. Once I select an inventory item, it'll be highlighted in green, which will essentially preview what I'm going to adjust. When I choose Add Selected Items, they will all appear down below. So now as I scroll down, you'll see I have my driveway gravel, my M&Ms, and then I can begin adjusting just like it did up top. The other option you have in terms of adjusting inventory is importing your adjustments. And I can click the Import Adjustment button, and here I have 2 icons to help me import. One is the cloud icon, and this will allow me to download a sample CSV file for me to easily import my inventory adjustments using the filled out column headers here. The other tool you have is the mapping, and if I click that, you'll see all those column headers we saw in the CSV file, but we'll also see a description of what information is needed for each individual column header. Once I've filled that out, I can upload the file here and begin the importing process to import an adjustment for my chosen items. So I'm going to actually choose Find and Select Items. I'll choose the items that I want to adjust, and then I click Save to post the inventory adjustment. Now, posting means that it's hit your general ledger. And if I want to view the details of that, I can click the posting journal, and this will show me the debits and credits of each of those adjustments. Once it's posted, the only action you have is to copy the inventory adjustment or void the inventory adjustment altogether. And here you can see everything that's been adjusted fairly easily in the preview. Now, the other option we have in terms of managing inventory is transferring inventory from one location to another. And to do that, we can click Accounting and Transfers underneath the Inventory section. Here I have a lot of search filters up here to search for a specific date range, a from location, a to location, the status, whether it's active or voided, and I can also expand search filters and search for specific inventory items as well. But if I want to just view all of my transfers that I've made in the past, I can click Search and they'll be listed here. Now, if I want to begin adding a new transfer, I can simply click the Add button, and this will take me to the Add Inventory Transfer screen. Now, here I can choose my transfer date, and I can go in the past or in the future if I want to. I'm just going to keep it as today's date. And then I can choose where I'm transferring items from and where they're going to be transferred to. So if I have multiple locations, I want to send it from one inventory location to another, and I'm going to select what items I'm transferring. So let's say I'm transferring gravel. When I choose the gravel, we'll see our quantity on hand, and I can then transfer how much from that. So let's say I'm transferring 1. I can then choose my financial class where I'm going to transfer them to, and then click the Save button, and then I can see a preview of what I've successfully transferred, and you'll see these are grayed out, meaning that the quantity on hand has already been transferred over from the Philadelphia location to the Salt Lake City location. And in terms of managing the inventory transfer, if I click Actions, I can void. I can also view my posting journals to see the debits and credits of the items, and share with any internal user by copying and pasting the link into a message. So that's a look at inventory management in Striven, and all the ways you can manage your inventory using transfers and adjustments.